بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. فأما بعد, my dear brothers and sisters, there is a basic principle in debating, negotiating and marriage, and that is never react to provocation. The thing to do instead is to do the opposite of what the opponent expects. I suggest to some of those who come to me with mother-in-law problems to hug and kiss the mother-in-law when she says something provocative. This can have one of two results. Either she will die of shock and your problem is solved, or she will change her mind about you, in which case your problem is solved. And therefore you win in both situations. The problem with reacting to provocation is that by doing so, you are not hurting the provoker, but playing into his hands. You are his dream come true. You are the heaven-sent reward for him. You are the puppet whose strings he controls. He's not upset or angry at what you do. He is delighted. By your reaction, you have justified his action. You have demonstrated to him that he was right all along. Once you react, he need not say anything more. You are now his biggest helper and evidence, and he salutes you, not in public of course, but in his heart. Thank you very much, O Muslims, for always delivering gold. This is how the Islamophobic industry thrives. Today I stand before you and with you in pain when we look at what is happening in France, where the despicable cartoons mocking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were displayed on major buildings. Also, all the punitive, illegitimate actions taken against Muslim institutions, apparently in retaliation for the horrible action of the Muslim man who retaliated and murdered the teacher who displayed cartoons of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to his class. I began this khutbah in this way to try to help you to understand the game board. If you don't understand the game board, you can never win the game. The game is people control. The world is run by 0.1% of the population. This elite group needs to control the rest of the population, for which the biggest challenge is to get the population to accept those restrictions on their freedom, invasion of their privacy, and manipulation of their lives. There are two ways to achieve this. One is through force, which comes with huge costs. The other is to create a situation where you get people to volunteer to give you information and accept restrictions which they would otherwise have refused and fought tooth and nail. Let me give you an example, which I am sure you will understand. Remember a time when we, at least some of us, used to write diaries in which we recorded some of our most intimate private thoughts. If someone read that diary without our permission, we would go ballistic. Remember a time when our parents, siblings, or even friends, if they asked us where we had been, who we had met, and what we had been up to, we resented it and we screamed invasion of privacy. Today we call it Facebook and Instagram. And marvel at how Mark Zuckerberg became so rich. Just think how this happened. How did someone persuade you to give him monetizable data, including the most intimate details of your life, freely and voluntarily? He persuaded you that it was good for you. You bought the story, and he's laughing all the way to the bank while you continue to boost his net worth. Thank you very much. In Hyderabadi Urdu, we have a saying, "Maut se daraye to bukhar ko razi." If you threaten with death, people will agree to have a fever. We are seeing this in a good way with COVID-19 virus. People today are healthier because they are cleaner, they wash their hands and so on. They are healthier, they are cleaner. Our cities have less pollution. Families have come together, not because all these are good things to do, but because we fear death by COVID, death by corona. People accepted restrictions on their movement, changed behavior, and adopted new ways because they are afraid. Fear is and has always been a powerful motivator. What is happening in the world with France and Denmark at the forefront is the same experiment with tragically the same success. Stoking fears so that people will accept more and more restrictions in their lives and accept more and more control of their movement, earning, saving, spending, activities, and do it all voluntarily and happily because they fear the threat. Going back a bit in history, that manufactured threat at one time was the Jews. Remember, I'm using the quotes, right? The manufactured threat at one time in history was the Jews. Then it was the communists. Today it is the Muslims. And of course, in this country and elsewhere also, it has always been the black man. This is called othering, where you focus on what is different in the other and interpret that and manipulate that in a negative way to project him as a threat to you and yours. The actions of the other, when they support your premise and allegation, are exactly the proof you need to convert the doubters. What gaming experts need is proof of concept. They need to show evidence that what they say is real. They need to prove the presence of a real threat. For this, they need the collaboration and cooperation of the opposite party. They get that by provoking to get an angry response. That response they show to the world and say, see what I told you? This guy is violent, and that is why he and his kind must be restrained and confined. And that is why we need controls, which will include checking all of you also to know who is hiding among you. Sound familiar? The reaction is so horrible that people forget the provocation and agree to accept the restrictions. This is exactly what is happening today in the world. And we Muslims are the reactors who are enabling those who control global populations or who want to control global populations to do so. We are their dream come true. Without our collaboration, they would fail miserably. Like a doctor who knows where to strike your knee with his rubber hammer to get the classic knee-jerk reaction, they know which button to press to get some of us to behave in a way that is guaranteed to get them the reaction they need to prove to the world that they are all facing a threat from Muslims and Islam. That is what happened in France, yet again. And I can assure you that this will happen again and again as long as we are willing and obliging enough to cooperate with the provocateurs. Get real people. Talk to whoever you know. Spread the message. I know you are angry when people mock Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If you didn't get angry, your iman would be in question. The problem is not with feeling an emotion, but with the way we express it. All emotions are value neutral. They become negative or positive because of the way they are expressed. This applies to anger, love, joy, grief, everything. Just try to express love out of context of time and space and see what happens. It is natural for a Muslim to get angry when somebody mocks Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What is not natural is to physically attack the mocker. That is a decision, a very stupid decision, which, as I explained to you, plays right into the hands of those who want you to behave in exactly that way to get what they want. They are delighted. Their bait never fails. Muslims always bite dead fish. Surely we are intelligent enough to see this. Or are we? I feel like a broken record saying this over and over again, but let me say it again anyway. The action of the man who murdered the teacher, who mocked and insulted Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was totally and completely wrong, Islamically and in every other way. Islam does not sanction or support vigilantism no matter what the provocation may be. Islam does not condone or support the murder of anyone for any reason. Islam stands for justice, the first principle of which is, after the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, sanctity of human life. All human life, not only the lives of Muslims, every life is sacred in Islam, and nobody has any right to kill anyone else except in self-defense if they are attacked. What Mr. Macron then proceeded to do was a dream come true for all Islamophobes and even more for recruiters to extremist causes. That a head of state doesn't have the wisdom to understand this is amazing, to say the least. His action was not the action of an individual, but the action of a head of state in his official capacity. If insulting the Prophet of Islam is freedom of expression, then will you permit people to insult any head of state today? I can ask many such questions, but I will spare you that. I quote one of the greatest fighters for justice, who paid for it with his life, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "There comes a time when silence is betrayal. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends." He also said, there comes a time when one must take a position. There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must take it because his conscience tells him that it is right. I say to you, O people of conscience everywhere, the time has come to speak out against all hatred. Hatred is fire, and the result is always ash. Speak out against Islamophobia, against the demonization of Muslims and Islam. Speak out because it concerns you as much as it concerns Muslims. Let me quote another Frenchman, Alphonse de Lamartine, poet, politician, historian, educationist, and writer, who wrote about the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "If the grandeur of the aim, the smallness of the means, and the immensity of results are the three measures of a man's genius, who would dare compare a great man of history with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam?" Makes you wonder what this great scholar and historian saw which escapes Mr. Macron. To hate someone who you never met and don't know is the definition of bigotry. When world leaders indulge in it, they consciously or inadvertently sanction and legitimize it for other bigots. This is what is happening today in many countries. This is what we must all fight together. There may be a price to pay for speaking out against injustice, but the cost of silence is higher. I recall the famous words of Pastor Martin Niemöller. He said, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Injustice to one is injustice to all. That is Islam. And that is why Islam orders us to stand against injustice, no matter who commits it, and to defend the victim of injustice, no matter who that might be. Speak out against injustice, O people of conscience. Speak out against hatred, O people of conscience. Because if we do not speak out, one day we will become its victims. My message to you is, especially to your Muslims, stop reacting. Do the opposite. Stop the game. My brothers and sisters, do not be sad. Do not be sad because nobody in the world can insult Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira. وَدَاعِيًا إِلَى اللَّهِ بِإِذْنِهِ وَسِرَاجًا مُنِيرًا." Allah said, "O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, O my Nabi, O Prophet, verily we have sent you as a witness and a bearer of glad tidings and a warner, and as one who invites to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by His leave, and as a lamp spreading light." How can anyone insult the one about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this? He sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the one about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And we have sent you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not but as a mercy for the alameen, for all that exists. My brothers and sisters, let me try to show you Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam through the eyes of a simple shepherd woman, our Sayyida Ma'bad radiyallahu anha, who met him when he was on his way to Yathrib, a refugee with a price on his head, hated by the Quraysh for no reason other than that he invited people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and tried to help the oppressed. So they announced a bounty and they tried to kill him. Ma'bad radiallahu anha's description speaks to us across 14 centuries in words so eloquent that they cannot be bettered. Her name was Atiqa bint Khalid al-Khuzayyah, and her camp was in Qudayd, a place between Mecca and Medina. She was a Bedouin woman who used to provide food and drink to travelers. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was on his way to Medina with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and his freed slave Abdullah bin Urayqat, who was their guide. They stopped to rest at Ma'bad's camp. When they asked her for some drink, she replied, "If I had had anything, you wouldn't need to ask." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then noticed a weak goat in one corner of her tent and asked her permission to milk it. She told him that it was beyond milking, implying that the goat was too weak and too old to be milked. Nevertheless, she gave him permission to milk it. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked for a bowl to draw the milk into, and he milked the goat himself, and to their amazement, to everyone else's amazement, all of them drank their fill. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam milked the goat one more time and left that milk for Ma'bad radiallahu anha and her family. When her husband returned and saw the milk, he was amazed and inquired about it. Ma'bad radiallahu anha narrated the whole incident and simply said, "A blessed man passed by us." Her husband, hearing about the man, asked her to describe him. It was then that Ma'bad radiallahu anha, an illiterate Bedouin woman, described Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in such eloquent and beautiful words that they are studied by scholars of classical Arabic to this day. She said, "I saw a man who was clearly handsome with a beautiful face. He is well built, neither blemished by a big belly nor disfigured by an unusually small head. The pupils of his eyes are very dark, his eyelashes are very long, and the area around the pupils is extremely white. His eyebrows are perfectly closed. He has very dark hair, a rather long neck, and a thick beard. When he remains silent, he is ever contemplative, and when he speaks, eminence and splendor show in his words. His words are like sliding stringed pearls. He is a gifted orator whose words are neither too few nor too many. He has the clearest diction and the most audible voice when he speaks. When you look at him from afar, he is the most handsome of all people, and when you move closer to him, he is the most pleasant of them. You will never be tired of looking at him. He is like a branch between two branches. He is the most handsome of the three and the most important of them. He has companions who honor him when he speaks. They listen to his words, and when he commands, they hasten to carry out his order. They serve and gather around him. He neither frowns nor nags." Do not grieve, my brothers and sisters. The Macrons of this world have no power to honor or insult anyone. Don't give them the satisfaction of knowing that he managed to hurt you. He displayed his own values, that is all. His behavior doesn't affect us, much less Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah is the one who honors and humiliates, and we will see that when we meet him, inshallah. He, Jalla Jalaluhu, said, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرُ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say, O people, say, everybody, O Allah, owner of all dominion, you grant dominion to whoever you will, and you take away dominion from whomever you will, and you honor whoever you will, and you disgrace whoever you will. In your hand is all good. Verily, you have the power to do anything. How can anyone insult the one about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself declared, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends His salat, His grace, His honor, blessing, mercy and so on Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and also His angels ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless and forgive him. O you who believe, send your salat and salam, send your salat, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless him, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and you should greet him with taslim salam. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidun Majid. How can anyone insult the one to whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, wa rafa'na laka dhikrak? How can anyone insult the one whose name is called out 5 times a day, 24/7, all around the world, so that the atmosphere echoes and resounds in his memory? Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. How can anyone insult this person? I say to you what Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to his companion in the cave. La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana. Do not be sad. Truly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us, inshaAllah. What can and does happen is that people who don't know Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tend to see us Muslims and imagine that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam must have been like us. And that is where the problem lies. I remind myself and you, therefore, of the need to ensure by every action of ours that we demonstrate the meaning of being Muslim. Remember that whether you like it or not, you represent Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So do it consciously, confidently, and very carefully. Let us become the contrast for all Islamophobic propaganda that exists in the world. Let us become the counterpoint for those who want to question the bigoted, racist and false versions of Islam and our beloved Rasulullah's character that Islamophobes like to propagate. Let people look at us and say, surely this can't be true. Let our life, character, behavior, dealings, let the smile on our face, let our society speak for us as Muslims and show the beauty of Islam to the world. We saw an excellent example of that when the MMA fighter Habib Nurmagomedov went out on top, finishing his career with an undefeated record after delivering a triangle choke to Justin Gaethje at the UFC 254 on Saturday. The fighter's reasoning for the choke over an arm bar, which is to break his arm, was that the opponent's parents were watching and he didn't want to hurt their son before them. He demonstrated the biggest sign of Islam, mercy. That is what we need. Don't be sad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us, and success is only when we meet Him, Jalla Jalaluhu. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار آمين يا رب العالمين وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.